My name is Nathaniel Brent. My case started when my 15-year-old son ran away from home because he didn't want to do a school assignment. The Detroit police made a phone call to CPS and informed Protective Services that the whole incident was due to poor decision making on the part of my son. CPS, after determining that the allegations were unsubstantiated, still conducted an investigation because in Ms. Wink's, the protective worker's own words, it seemed like there was something going on in the home. CPS violated my Fourth Amendment rights on several occasions, doing searches of my home over my objections. And in response to my objections, they told me I had no right to object. They were there on behalf of the child, and I had no rights. They also committed a felony under Michigan law, which is Michigan Compiled Law 750.539D, which prohibits the taking of photographs on the inside of someone's home without their consent. They've admitted they didn't have consent, and they said they didn't need my consent to do it. Approximately a month after they took these photographs is when they decided to remove my children from my home. Not because of any health or safety risk to my children, but because I refused to submit to their will. The warrant used to remove my children was rubber stamped, and any first-year law student would realize that it was not a legal document. There's too many contradictions on the document. There's nobody authorized to execute the order or anything else. The family court proceedings are reminiscent of Star Chamber hearings or the McCarthy era. There's no evidence required. I was denied my right to self-represent myself on more than one occasion, and because I requested to represent myself, they said that I had mental health issues. The Court of Appeals, the Michigan Court of Appeals, recognized that the court didn't follow the proper procedures, recognized that the judge crossed the line when the judge took on the role of prosecutor, but then said that my rights weren't violated. The Michigan Supreme Court has refused to hear the case. I also have pending in Wayne County Circuit Court a case on an appeal from the administrative hearing for the Central Registry case, in which the ALJ admitted to committing a felony on the bench. I also have a case pending in the U.S. District Court currently, where I am suing all of these state actors for their violations of my civil rights, my constitutional rights, and both federal and state law.
I know I'm kind of going off in a broad scope here, but I would like, if you feel justified, for you to start bringing up names. What county? You said Wayne County.
This was in Wayne County.
Okay, so as you feel comfortable about it, I would say to start naming some names, and if you're having criminal allegations, if you've gone to prosecutor, the attorney general, and anybody else.
Well, the attorney general is one of the persons who is committing the felonies. And the assistant attorney general, I can't remember the name of the assistant attorney general that represented them in the family court, but it was Chantel Fennessy in the administrative hearing system that committed a felony by distributing photographs that were taken in violation of the law. The attorney general in the family court case did the same thing. The judge on both Judge Hartsfield in the family court case said that the law didn't apply in her court. The same thing with the ALJ, Christopher Sepanon in the administrative hearing system. When I brought up the fact that the attorney general was committing a felony, his response was, if they're committing a felony, then so am I, because I'm going to allow it. And those are on record that I have an audio tapes of or transcripts of to prove I'm correct. I have the protective service worker admitting that they didn't ask permission to take photographs of my home, and stating that they weren't required to ask my consent. I have that on audio tape. I have it on audio tape where months before my children were eventually returned to me, the foster care worker admitted that there was no reason my children were removed from my home.
Could you give the ages of your kids and explain also what the AGJ is?
Okay, the AG is the Assistant Attorney General. The ALJ is an administrative law judge, which is somebody appointed by the governmental agency that oversees these administrative hearings, which basically you're guilty and have to prove your innocence, which is contradictory to the justice system we're supposed to have in this country.
The ages of your kids and how long you've been going through all this?
I've been going through all this since February of 2010. At the time of the incident, my youngest child was 10 years old. And my next oldest was 12, and then 13, 14, and 16, or excuse me, that was 14, 15, and 16 at the beginning of it. By the time I got my children back, my oldest child was 17 and my youngest child was 11. And currently, 2 of my children are now over 18, who are also tried to join in with the appeals in the Court of Appeals after they reached the age of maturity, but because their own rights were violated during this process.
So, are you a single parent?
No, it was both me and my wife, and we were both placed on the Central Registry.
Can you explain to the people how you see the Central Registry being used against parents and what it takes to get, are you still on? You mentioned you got your kids back, some of the things that you had to go through in order to get them back.
Well, the Central Registry, once you're placed on the Central Registry, you're placed on it for life. You have to try and appeal through the administrative hearings process, and I'm currently in circuit court on that issue. And you have to prove your innocence instead of them having the burden of proof to prove that you actually committed any offense against the child. How you get placed on the Central Registry is a protective service worker decides whether or not you're guilty of child abuse or child neglect. And that is the only determination. You don't have any opportunity to defend yourself or any notice of hearing or any other type of due process before you're placed on the Central Registry.
That's why I'm hearing so many people say it's unconstitutional.
That is correct. There's no due process, and then when you do get to the appeals process, you have to prove your innocence.
Tell us how you see these courts working. The reason why I asked your job description.
I generally work as a machinist, machine programmer, machine repairman, something in the mechanical technical fields.
And what gave you, because you've only been doing this for 2 years now, I recognize that you have the right allegations. You feel confident about saying these allegations, whereas it took me a couple of years of being in the courts, more than that, to really realize that these were crimes. I was right to call them crimes. I was right to say that the Attorney General is committing crimes. It's kind of hard to do that and keep a straight face for most people.
Well, with me, this isn't my first run-in with the legal system. I sued the city of Detroit representing myself back in 2005 in federal court and was successful on that. So, and personally, I don't trust attorneys. Attorneys are not they're not the most honest of characters. And this is a moral fight, not to line somebody's pocket.
Very good. And elaborate more on with these, and again, naming names if you feel comfortable, your experiences with the courts and and how you see them either dismissing you, just letting you slide right on up to the Michigan Supreme Court?
Well, for the most part, with the family court, like I said, they refused to even allow me to represent myself. In fact, because I requested to represent myself, they said I must have mental health problems. And so the family court basically looked at my request as a joke. And the second time I made a request, Judge Hartsfield falsified documents saying that I requested a new attorney. Referee Bobeck is the one that stated that I had mental health issues because I requested to represent myself. So the family court just pretty much dismissed any requests I had to represent myself. Now, with the Court of Appeals, again, they pretty much just sloughed me off because since I'm not an attorney, I can't know the law. Even though the presiding judge, when I went to oral argument, Justice Sad, commended me on the great presentation I gave for my case, he turned around and said that it was appropriate for them to deny me my right to self-representation without any justification. Again, they admitted that the Judge Hartsfield crossed the line when she challenged my credibility in front of the jury and was doing the prosecution's job for them. They said, well, that didn't violate any of my rights. The Michigan Supreme Court has refused to hear the case, the entire Supreme Court, except for Justice Hathaway, who declined to even be involved in the case because she is related to Referee Bobeck.
Referee Bobeck, okay. Interesting. Seems like she's got a lot of relatives, and she's also got a sister in the Wayne County Church.
Yeah, that's who. Amy Hathaway is the person that I'm in front of in the circuit court on my appeal from the Central Registry.
Interesting. I have Hathaway in another case myself. As you know, this is Lawless America The Movie. And I'm doing some other stuff here for the public access television. And mine is Power Corrupts Again. And I outline stories. What would you like to see from this movie, from this experience, and getting your stuff on tape? And how would you like to see, what kind of resolve do you think can be done about this system, this whole system?
First, they need to get rid of the whole judicial immunity aspect where a judge can commit any crime they want and get away with it. There needs to be some type of accountability when these judges are acting maliciously. The next thing is the protective service program needs to be revised where they're not needlessly taking children out of their home and actually having the children that are being abused and neglected in their system. In my situation, my son ran away from his foster care placement coughing up blood because they refused a medical treatment. And nothing was done with this. They turn a blind eye to these foster care agencies and place more children back into them. These issues need to be addressed and fixed, not only for my children, but for this whole nation.
Do you think that your children can be healed or will heal? Is your family healed?
My family as a unit is healed because we stuck together through it all. My children knew that all of this, even though they tried to convince my children they were being abused and neglected. My children are all highly intelligent and know better. So my children were not very cooperative with them as well. So as a family unit, we've been able to stick together and work through it. However, the emotional damage that was done to them due to the abuse and neglect they suffered at the hands of DHS and their agents is something that's going to live with them for the rest of their life.
How about the financial? I know in my own case, the financial cost on me has taken away everything that I had set aside for my child for college and everything else.
Yeah, well, I mean, there is a financial toll because I'm still fighting this, but since I'm not using attorneys and representing myself, I'm minimizing those costs at least.
As long as
and I mean, These are constitutional issues. You know, you have the right to be able to raise your children. Unless you're harming your children, then they shouldn't be being pulled from your home. You have the right to privacy in your own home. The government cannot intrude. The Fourth Amendment is clear. You have the right to represent yourself in court. That's part of the Sixth Amendment of the Constitution, as well as Michigan's Constitution, Article 1, Section 13. These are guarantees from our Constitution and laws that are being ignored by our court system. And if something is not done about it, it's going to promote anarchy. Because if we cannot rely upon the courts for justice, then you have to take justice into your own hands.
The viewing audience should note that Nathaniel Brent had stated that he took issue with the way referee Nicholas Boback had treated he and his wife, and that when he had brought his appeal to the Michigan Supreme Court, that Supreme Court Justice Diane Hathaway recused herself from hearing Nathaniel's case because of a conflict of interest, being that she was related to referee Boback, one of those Nathaniel was accusing of committing crimes against him and his wife. There is significance in Nathaniel's video testimony here because it points to the bigger problem here in Michigan of entire families and their friends controlling the judicial system and running criminal racketeering operations from the lowest courts all the way up to the Michigan Supreme Court, with names like Kavanaugh, Kelly, Borman, Cox, and Hathaway. In this case, Nathaniel had a separate case being heard in the Wayne County Circuit Court with Judge Amy Hathaway, who, as seen here, was on the recent 2012 ballot listed as an incumbent judge along with Chief Judge Virgil Smith, who I have spotlighted in another Power Corrupts Again testimony showing that Virgil Smith is committing treason and many other felony crimes from the bench because, though he is listed here as an incumbent judge on this ballot, he has no oath of office on file with the Secretary of State's office for the past 7 years and is not a judge, so is committing another felony offense of voter fraud upon the public. In any event, Amy Hathaway and Nicholas Boback of the Wayne County Circuit Court are both related to Supreme Court Justice Diane Hathaway, who just this November 2012 was shown to be under criminal investigation by the FBI for bank fraud in the housing market. I have my own complaints about Judge Diane Hathaway and other Supreme Court justices who have just this year dismissed no less than 4 separate cases I brought to them alleging judicial and other government corruption, including corruption by the Michigan Attorney General Bill Schuette and his staff, who also is the same staff of government attorneys that work for another government criminal, the former Michigan Attorney General Mike Cox. One of my cases, dismissed by the Michigan Supreme Court, was for a grand jury investigation of Michigan government corruption, including corruption in the office of the Michigan Attorney General. It appears that Diane Hathaway got caught defrauding a bank of $600,000 in the handling of a posh second home in Orlando, Florida. The investigation also involved another $1.5 million waterfront home in Grosse Pointe Park, Michigan, according to the Detroit Free Press. Now, as my crime report in several cases that were dismissed by Judge Diane Hathaway and the other Michigan Supreme Court justices named the Michigan Attorney Generals Bill Schuette and Mike Cox and their collective staff of assistant attorney generals, is it no wonder that the Detroit Free Press reports that the Michigan Attorney General Bill Schuete's office has no comment about the FBI investigation of Hathaway. The Attorney General has had the back of the Hathaways and other family dynasties for a long time. Note that Nathaniel Brent also complains about the Michigan Attorney General's assistants committing crimes against him.